everyone, welcome Tori. You may know Tori because she has been a superstar educator in GLOBE, and now she became a superstar GLOBE partner at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. So I love it when our educators move up in a way, or move over, or however you want to describe it, but they're utilizing their depth of experience, their passion for GLOBE in a new way to inspire other educators. And that to me is who Tori is. In addition to raising a superstar student who has used GLOBE to be really, to advance her career in so many ways. And so, very exciting, so amazing to have it be a family affair. And so, I want to welcome Tori to talk about her work using GLOBE. Um, please put any questions you have in the chat, and hopefully, we'll have a few minutes at the end to answer anything else that comes up while Tori presents. And welcome, Tori, and thank you for presenting.
Thank you. Let's see. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I am very excited to present. I was thinking about it last night. I've been thinking about it for a while, but putting my finishing touches on last night and this morning and realized that this is just a subject that's near and dear to my heart. And I'm really not that nervous about presenting it because this is what I've been doing for the last 15 years. So I'm excited to share with you some of the things that I've learned and some of the things that I still have yet to learn on getting our GLOBE Hydrosphere protocols and activities out there to more of the population. So I've been working on this for the last couple of years, and Christy's been helping me, Christy Buffington, with wonderful ideas and support as well on how to incorporate the GLOBE Hydrosphere. Thanks, Christy, with our adaptation process with our local watershed group. And so okay, so um, I'm Tori Brannan, as I was introduced. I'm also, besides being a GLOBE educator and a GLOBE trainer, I work with the Tanana Valley Watershed Association. I shouldn't say work, but I'm on the board of directors, so I'm the secretary there. And this all has transpired because I worked with them during our time at Pile Driver Slough when they worked with our school, and I'll show you more about that. Okay, so I'll move you guys over here. I also work at the International Arctic Research Center for an education outreach and science education and a program manager. I tell people that I failed at retirement I retired from the school district after teaching for 22 years. But I love teaching. I love science. I love youth. And this was just a really good fit for me. But it also has really, I like to think, helped our partner here because I also come with a wealth of teaching experience at all grade levels and administrative experience. So I know how schools and school districts work. And so I think that's helped me out quite a bit in my work with kids. My protege, Teslin, is not here today. She's my field intern since she's been kindergarten. She's been my field intern and now works with the Tanana Valley Watershed Association. She is currently in Washington, D.C. at the NOAA Holly and Scholar orientation. So she is continuing to use GLOBE immensely and doing really well with it and represents it well. So Adopt a Stream looks different across the US. I've done some research. I tried to figure out, what other groups were doing. It's kind of a well-known phrase, but it doesn't mean that everything is done the same, unlike GLOBE. And that's the beauty in the GLOBE protocols is that whether we're doing water temperature in Alaska or water temperature in Dubai, it's the same. And that's one of the things I really love about it. And so our Tanana Valley Watershed Association Adopt-a-Stream program kind of had a lull during COVID. And the forward momentum that we'd been having just took a drastic step back, and we were trying to get it started again. And it was just kind of, it wasn't working as well as we thought. And so I approached the board about, well, why don't we try incorporating GLOBE protocols into the mix, and then also try to push into schools or into groups or someplace that will give us more long-term data, um, kind of modeling after what they did with us at Salch Elementary School for 10 years. And so they agreed, and I talked with the Globe Alaska Partnership here at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and they also agreed and offered in-kind partnership through our work here. And so we started a beautiful partnership was started. And we, like I said, our adoption focus is more with the K-12 classrooms, summer camps, youth organizations, with the intention of increasing that vested interest in long-term data collection. So this is how it started. It started in 2011 when a levee, and that's the green line that is on the far right-hand side, was built to protect a railway extension bridge, and that's the orangish yellow line crossing the river there. And then there's a picture of the levee to give you an idea of how big it actually is. So 9,000 truckloads of riprap, 600,000 cubic yards of embankment covered, and it cut off the head of Piledriver Slough, which you can see is the thin blue line to the right of the green levee line. So it cut off the head and prevented it from getting flushing or from ice jams from high water that would clear out algae blooms, that would clear out beaver dams, and just keep this mostly freshwater slough running and really good for sport fishing. But since it was cut off, it became entirely groundwater fed. And so that morphed into, in 2012, a study with TVWA, where they had a 10-year impact analysis that they were doing on juvenile fish, water quality, and beaver activity on Piledriver Slough. And they approached the school that I was then teaching at and said, how would you like to partner with us and be involved in this study? We said, of course. It was a whole school activity, so K through 6 in a small Title I rural school. And 3 times a year, we would take all of our students out to 8 different sites along the slough and collect data. And it was included in fish, not just water quality as well. And so to give you an idea of the expanse of it, that included 119 life jackets, 84 children, 35 buses, 35 adults, 2 buses, 8 sites, 5 miles, 2 meals, 4 hours, and 0 cell service. So it was logistically quite a feat to do. So how do you do things like this? And anything that you're taking on, you partner up. And so that way you don't feel like you're having to do it all by yourself. And so our initial funding came from the Alaska Railroad, but we had partnered with Department of Fish and Game for permits for fish traps, the University of Alaska, IARC, and Arctic Inner Science for GLOBE expertise and training, the GLOBE program. Tanana Valley Watershed Association would come out and actually do the collection with us 3 times a year with our school. And this actually morphed into, and Salcha Fire and Rescue. We had life jackets on every single one of those kids and as many adults as we could because we wanted to model proper water safety. The young adult male demographic in Alaska has the highest incidence of drowning in our state. And so we wanted to in kind of ingrain that in them while they're young, that if you're near water, you wear a life jacket. And so we began monitoring. We started first in 2012 with the low-cost water quality monitoring kits. But then I ran into Christy Buffington at a educator museum night in 2017, and she introduced me to GLOBE. And she said, what you're doing fits really nicely into these protocols, and started explaining it to me. And I was a new principal now at that same school, and I invited her in for some training with our staff, and we were off and running. And so we use, scientific tools and then curriculum mapping. You see a picture of the low-cost water quality kit, the Hanometers, which we use now, the minnow traps, which we used for 10 years. And then you see Tesla in there working with the low cost as well as the water temperature. And then there's a snapshot of our second grade curriculum. And what we did is we would spiral our curriculum so that each year students were building on what they had learned the year before, since our population at the school was pretty stable. And so they would continue learning about building upon what they were learning the year before, and then we also focused whether it was on pH or dissolved oxygen or stream flow, we would have a specific focus each year as well. And the thought and what we saw, our hope and what we saw was that their sampling would lead to stewardship. And so there are some examples there of their projects. This is one particular student who was involved in each three of these projects as they progressed educationally, from their K-1 science fair project that they went to the district science fair with as a class, to a beginning of high school student research symposium, GLOBE Student Research Symposium project, to an end of high school professional science conference poster. And so same SLU, same study, deeper understanding of why they're doing the study, more data to look at and to make look for trends for, and more analysis and thought that they're able to share. And then it also led to career paths. So these two kindergartners, there's Teslin and Rusty, the nice thing about our rural Title I school is it's generational, and these kids are practically siblings. They just grow up together. And so these two started off at their very tender age and young scientists of 5 and 6 years old. And they continued, even when they left elementary school, they continued in with this study. They came back. They just kept coming back year after year and being peer mentors to the new student scientists. And they did this all the way through high school, which actually gave them summer intern jobs where they were getting paid to do the same sampling that they learned in kindergarten and first grade and were continuing throughout the years. They were getting paid to do this in the summer months. And that's what we're looking for also is not only teaching kids how to think and how to do science, but also that it is workforce skills. So that's how it started, how it's going. So in 2012, TVWA was sponsored for the Pile Driver Sloop project at Salcha School. In 2022, it ended, that 10-year project. We still know the sites. I still go out and check them once in a while, but the funding ended. And that's something we're going to talk about later because these sites were not near our school. We had to hire buses to get out to them. In 2025, TVWA Adopt a Stream had a redesign and a soft start. So we started with 7 organizations and about 17 sites. And then we've continued that through this spring for 2026. We've added an additional 2 organizations and 4 more sites in May. So these are our sites as of right now, the little red dots from the GLOBE visualization system. And you can see we have about 3 sites in Fairbanks, 7 sites in North Pole, and about 11 sites in Salcha and Moose Creek area. So it's spread out a little bit more than the original Adopt a Stream, which was mostly in Fairbanks, North Pole areas. We are, as I get more and more organizations on board, though, you'll see more red dots in urban areas, which will be good because urban streams are definitely different than rural streams. So when I say organizations, what I mean are groups like schools, classrooms, which includes public schools, charter schools, private and homeschool. And how I reached out to those schools was I used Google Earth to find water bodies that were close to schools. Again, realizing that there's a funding crunch and most of these sites are going to have to be walking distance to be feasible. And then I had the benefit of being a retired principal. I knew most of the administration, or at least I knew how to contact them. And so I was able to reach out and show them and talk with them and say, hey, we have this opportunity where we can provide hands-on science that's aligned to your standards. And that's the clicker right there when you're working with organizations like schools, is you need to be able to show the administration and the teachers that you are not putting more on their plate, that you are actually making their job easier. And so when I go to them, I show them, this is what's in your standards. This is what's in your curriculum. This is what you're supposed to be teaching. This is how you can do it that the kids will actually, be outside enjoying and have is very authentic. It's open to all grades, so even pre-K. And then the easiest way too is to talk to your rock star teachers. We know who our rock star teachers are. They're the ones who are involved, who we see repeatedly at outreach events. And I have a picture insert there of who I consider rock star teachers. Abigail on the far left is not a teacher yet. I think she's kind of fighting it, but she is just a natural teacher. Christy Buffington, of course, has been a public school teacher as well. Myself, and then Marcy Ward is a retired teacher, recently retired teacher, and she comes back and is doing it. You just can't stay away once you know what you've got here, and so they just keep coming back. So find those rock star teachers, bring them in, or go into their classrooms, approach them again, always having their administrator blessing. And then again, promote at educator resource fairs and then integrate school science with like outdoor days, science days. Schools have these in the spring, in the fall, when it gets hard to teach kids because it's so nice outside. You just take learning outside. And so those are the perfect times to say, would you like to do green up? Would you like to learn about green down? We can offer this to your school on your outdoor day. Other organizations that we're having success with include Scouting, 4-H, different church groups, homeschooling groups. You usually find these at outreach events. They bring their troops or their groups there. You drop off flyers at their administrative offices. You offer to come to their next leadership meeting and present what you have to offer. And then summer camps is another subject, another area where you can be the visiting science, or you can be the SME there, and they love to bring people in and teach the campers. And then integrating, it's really important when you're doing the summer camp so that you integrate science with a creative activity. For example, here I was working with a Cub Scout pack, and we were doing measurements down at the Chena River, but at first I wanted to teach them what a watershed was. So very simple, fun activity of creating a paper watershed and then seeing what happens when you add the water cycle to your paper watershed. Families are another group that you can work with, and then business partners. And we have back on the previous slide, I'm not sure if I can get back, you saw a big riverboat in the background, and you'll see it on another slide too. That's one of the business partners with a school. It's actually a tourist group, the Riverboat Discovery. And they partner with the school, and they're actually partnering with us for the Adopt a Stream work. And then utilizing the hydrosphere protocols, we're not doing all of them, but we do the Globe Observer app, the air temperature, water temperature, pH using pH strips and a probe, transparency tube, dissolved oxygen with a probe, and conductivity with a probe. As we get some junior high and high school groups on board, I'll probably be breaking out some of the Lamont kits for dissolved oxygen, nitrates, some of those, because I think that, they will have the support of their teachers to be able to do that more so than at the elementary level. The logistics, and this is where it gets really tricky. So equipment came from a variety of resources. I laid everything out from one of my student kits on the table last night and took a picture last night. That's like 10 o'clock at night. That's a beautiful thing about living in Alaska, bright sunshine. And so the equipment came from a variety of sources. It came from an aqua grant, the Alaska Clean Water Actions grant through the Fairbanks Stormwater Advisory Committee. It came through borrowing from Globe Alaska Partnership, and it's also come through the schools. So the nice 1-gallon sturdy bucket, that's actually a pickle bucket from the cafeteria. And schools and districts, they have more buckets than they need then they know what to do with. So a simple work order from the school, say, hey, could we have some buckets? They send out a bunch of buckets and we have, something we didn't have to buy and really sturdy buckets to use that the kids can actually haul up. Other items like the turbidity or the transparency tube, those were made very cheaply from products at your local hardware store. And then you see some of the low-cost water quality monitoring kits there too. And then the training, it really varies depending on their interest. There are some groups that want you to come in and lead the whole thing. They don't feel comfortable in it yet. And I don't know if they ever will. There's other groups that the teachers are just like, train me up. I'm ready to go. Just show me how to do it. Show me how to enter data. And they're off and running. And all you have to do is provide them with a kit and guidance. And so it really, you have extremes there. So it's best if you have support you can bring with you to assist with that. And I'll talk with that some more. Okay, the site selection. So there's that riverboat discovery again. And I put that on there in the picture because it's important. Luckily, that site on the Chena River is within walking distance of the Watershed Charter School, and it can have a safe access point to its dock. What wasn't safe for us, we figured out after our first time monitoring, was the dock. After we lost a bucket and we saw it sweep under the current, under the boat, and exit out the other side, we were like, okay, we're moving our kids back up to the deck and off of the dock, and we will have an adult down there collecting the water sample. So this was actually our second time collecting water from that site. With the sixth graders, we would have the adults. You see, that's Christy back there in the purple in the middle. She has a life jacket on. So whoever was collecting was down on the dock collecting, had life jackets on. But because the kids were up on the deck and not on the water, they did not need their life jackets. That's why they don't have that. But the safe access was important for that. And it was an easy fix, an easy change. And honestly, it made the business owners less anxious too to have us, even though we had a safety plan and it had been approved by the school district and by the business. This was just a better change all around. The transportation I've talked about, the funding to pay for a bus. School districts are hurting right now. They don't have the extra funding, and they end up charging families and parents to rent the bus. And having worked in a Title I school, which is a school of poverty, we did everything we could not to put those costs back onto families. And so that's where grants become important if you are busing to a location, or like I said, trying to find a location that's within walking distance. What was tricky with modifying from the pile driver slough model at Salta School to a whole group wide-ranging adopt-a-stream model was the group size. I was blessed to have an amazing amount of parent engagement at our school. And so when we did this school-wide, we had lots of volunteers, repeat volunteers. All of our staff was trained in the GLOBE protocols. And so we were able to break down into really small groups and to cover 8 sites. And there were actually 2 sampling sites at each site. So if you want to look at this, more like 16 sites. And so we were able to really get into it. But I have found that a lot of schools do not have that level of support. And so that has required me to kind of change how I work with students in groups. And so the groups can range anywhere from like a small group of 6 to a whole class of 30 at once. And oftentimes it was just me and the teacher. If I was lucky, maybe a parent volunteer, maybe I was able to bring in some of our Tanana Valley Watershed staff or some of our Global Alaska Partnership staff, but not always. And one thing with schools and businesses, if they say they can do it this day at this time, you pretty much need to be ready because their schedules are very, very full. And so depending on the number of adults that were willing to help, I would adjust what I was doing. And so luckily in this picture, I did have help. There were the 4 of us there to help. But still, because it was a large class, what we do is we split them up into 3 groups. And let me tell you, have the teacher split the groups because they know which kids should not be together. And then I would have one of those kits for each group. And in each kit, I have enough materials for that group to be sampling, for three of them to be sampling at the same time. I know that's not necessary. I tell them I need three samples, I need three data points. But the more kids involved, the more engaged they are, the less trouble there will be. And it's just more fun. They want to be involved. So three thermometers, I only had one hanometer. They had to take turns with that. And I had one oxygen probe for the whole group. But they would take turns with some of the things, but other things that were very much had three of them doing at the same time. And then if I had a smaller group, then maybe I'd only break out two kits. Or if I had a really small group, we'd do just one kit, but we'd do multiple different sites. So I forgot to take off the site selection there, but the safety plans, those are super important, especially in districts. Districts required water safety plans, so I had to be able to show and work with the administrator how we were navigating um, the deep water, or how we were navigating kids that couldn't swim, or how we were navigating getting additional insurance, which was required by our school district. And so one of the things is that whoever you have volunteering from your group or your partnership, you should fill out, or you need to check on volunteer packets and background checks with your school district. Otherwise, we found that we had to be within sight and sound of the teacher, and that's really hard to do if you have groups broken out into three or more groups. And so when I have my background check, then that allows me to be alone with a small group of students. And then the university also has training requirements that I have to go through for that. Life jackets. It can be hard to find enough life jackets for large groups that fit everybody. So this started when I was at Salta School, but I've been able to continue borrowing life jackets from our local search and rescue group that has a grant through the Kids Don't Float program. You can also do these grants through the U.S. Coast Guard, where they provide life jackets that they leave at swimming holes or boat launches. And so they have brand new life jackets that I have stored in my shed that I bring out so that all kids can be wearing their life jackets. And then for those kids, because these are usually universal size life jackets, I have a couple much larger life jackets, extra large jackets that I bring to fit all body types and adults too. Like I said, I really encourage adults to wear life jackets. I always wear a life jacket. Of course, that is a university safety protocol that I am required to follow, but even so, it is just good modeling for us. Adult supervision, we talked a little bit about that. And then the dressed for the elements. If anybody's taught middle school, you know that someone's going to show up in slippers and pajama pants. Even if it's snowing outside, even if it's muddy and breakup and water's running off, someone will show up in Crocs, someone will show up in flip-flops. Someone will not be dressed for the elements. And so and there it comes to a point where that's a natural consequence too. They're going to be cold. But we do what we can to mitigate that. So through that, making sure that their teachers are reminding them and their parents that we're doing this day, check the weather, dress for the weather. With the littles, when I was at principal, we had a box for borrowed gear, which included rubber boots and warmer clothing. And then for that snowy day that we did our last water quality measurement there with the Discovery, at the Discovery dock, you saw all the snow there. That was October 19th. That was a pretty late measurement for us, but the river was still open, so we could do it. I had a secret stash of hand warmers and toe warmers with me that I didn't necessarily advertise. I more of like had it, and I was watching for the kids that were shivering, or I was watching for the kids that needed it. And I also reminded them, if you put a life jacket on, that's another layer, and it will keep your core warm, which will keep your fingers warm. So, these teachable moments for them as well. Photo releases are something else that you need to navigate. I have all kinds of photo releases the teachers have them for the school and for their Cub Scout groups, but not necessarily Globe and NASA. And so that's why you see like one of the faces there is blurred out because that's honestly a navigation and a logistic that is a little bit more tricky to get unless because their parents oftentimes aren't with you on the study. And then the data. Okay, you've done the study, entering the data, whether you do it or your teacher is doing it. And then afterwards, and this is one that often falls off of, although I have to give Global Alaska Partnership a lot of credit. They do really good with this with the phonology, and that is the afterwards data jams. And Christy, you were also really good with this, with the data jams with some of the groups too. And so they've taken the data, but what does it mean? And coming back, and this it gets a little tricky, especially at the end of the year, because oftentimes these are in the last week of school when we finally have the waterways opened up from breakup, and there's just all kinds of activities going on. So being able to get back in there and do the data jam is a little tricky, but it's important because they need to know what's happening with the data that they took, what it means, where it's going, and then looking hopefully at the longevity of it. Where we hope to go with it. So we have done macroinvertebrates kind of just for exploration. And we've done cloud protocols a few times, but it oftentimes was hard to keep the attention of the youngers throughout the whole time of including clouds as well. So I would love to add macroinvertebrates, especially after watching Peggy's Watercooler last week. I'll add that to the mix here. And it might be that maybe we come back, a couple different times. Maybe we just collect samples and we look at them later. I'm still kind of fleshing that out a little bit. I also updated the AdaptaStream page on our website last night, something that's been on my to-do list for a while, and it still needs some work, but it's up and it's published. An interactive newsletter and tutorial, which I have an example there from the Green Up Some More newsletter that we put out from Global Alaska Partnership. And this is where it has all the links, the tutorials, the videos, everything you need to get started right there. And then also inspired by Jen and Peggy, I worked on a Padlet last night. And so I have those AdaptaStream Padlets going. It's probably more than needs to be there. I just started putting everything I could think of in there, and I'll probably need to weed some things out, but I can show you those when I click out of the presentation. Another hope that I would have is that we spread this to communities throughout the Tanana Valley Watershed. Now, that's kind of tricky. One, our aqua grant is through the Fairbanks Stormwater um, Commission. And so we would probably need to look at some other grants to expand it further. And also, our watershed is the size of Tennessee with not a lot of road access. And so, but some of these, we definitely have communities outside of road access. So again, that's where the Padlet, the web page, and the Some More newsletter come into play, is how do I train these communities that want to be involved without necessarily being there? How do I support them without being there? And then our watershed actually crosses through two countries. So we go into Canada, which I would love to be able to coordinate with Canada. And so I have two countries, multiple boroughs, multiple communities, and tribes as well. So, but I think we can do it. I think we can do it, expand through there, and then ideally expand to communities throughout the whole state of Alaska through the Alaska Globe Partnership, and then also become a model for other watershed adopt-a-stream programs on how they can utilize Globe for the important work that they're doing. And back to just why we do this. And our Tanana Valley Watershed Association sponsors a storm drain art contest where they clean up and paint around our storm drains in downtown Fairbanks, because these storm drains drain straight into the Chena River. And groups, families, artists submit their plans. They're given a stipend for paint. And we're actually doing this Saturday, and they paint it to remind people where the storm drains go. And this one just says it all. It says, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And this is from Dr. Seuss. because what happens upstream doesn't stay upstream. And so those are my contact details. And I will exit out of here and I will show you those. So this is the Adopt a Stream page on the Tanana Valley Watershed Association webpage. And it just goes through, there's a place where people can volunteer, submit for volunteer as pictures of old, previous studies, talks a little bit about our Adopt a Stream program, water quality monitoring, what we do, where the data goes, where it went before 2025 and where it's going now. Previous water quality sites that are available for adoption. Actually, you find me a good site and we'll let you adopt it. These were all the adoption sites before COVID. Granted, some of them, we asked them to monitor them at least twice a year, and sometimes we ended up going out and doing the monitor when it fell through the monitoring. These are the current monitoring sites as of right now for the past 2 seasons, but again, it's growing as we get the word out, and the hope is that this will be longevity-wise, which should actually decrease our workload because these will be sites that these organizations have adopted and just continue using. Some how to get involved, enrichment activities, and then there's a link to the Padlet, which I still keep adding more columns to. Training protocols, TVWA data sheets, GLOBE data sheets, types of equipments. One thing I put on here is lead instructor contents. For example, I carry the gloves so I can hand them out to the kids. I carry, let me click on that. I carry, and we can also, depending on who's doing the monitoring, the pH buffers with the hanometers. But the GoPro dissolved oxygen monitor or probe, those run close to $500. So I carry that and I go to the sites and do that with them. And yeah, just the hanometers are a little over 100, between 100 and 200. Those are a little easier to replace, but this one, not so much. We only have 3 working at the moment. So I carry those. The clouds, different activities that people can do with the clouds and games. And then the websites, some macroinvertebrates. We actually have our own Alaskan interior Alaska macroinvertebrate keys that we use, some pH activities, dissolved oxygen activities, essential questions that we would ask our kids before we would go out. We did a lot of pre-teaching before actually going out and collecting water sampling when it was part of our curriculum. Now that it's Adopt a Stream, I don't necessarily have that option all of the time, although most teachers would welcome a visit and you coming in and teaching science to their classroom. So you could still work on some of these essential questions with them. And then transparency, streamflow mapping, fish ID, salmon activities, and invasive species activities. And then the last one, oh, I showed you the Padlet. I just wanted to show you the some more really quick. This is our Green Up newsletter some more. I am working on Adopt a Stream. I'm not there yet, but it has just quick, easy to read, go where you need it, quick YouTube videos on how to convert to the nearest millimeter for teachers or students that may not feel comfortable in that, steps and tutorials, including Globe Grandma, which I might have to recruit her to do more for Adopt a Stream. And that's it really quickly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tori. That was really like lots of good tips in there. A
There's so
ton of
many more.
good
I kept
tips.
thinking of more. I was adding more this morning. So I'm like, oh, I forgot this. Oh, I forgot that.
And lots of comments for you, positive comments in the chat. But does anyone have any questions? We only have about 2 minutes. Um, but yeah, still comments are coming in. But any questions for Tori?
I will say that the size small nitrile gloves at Costco, where you get to pack of two, work for most kids. I only really needed the super small child size nitrile gloves for like my pre-Ks kinders. Most others fit in this size small.
If I'm allowed to ask a question,
Of course.
got 1 minute. So now I have to ask quickly. Uh, I've been hearing from a national group after school program that kids who are elementary age can't learn about pH because that's a middle school topic. You've been doing it since kindergarten with students. What could be a good response that I could have without being, because these are educators, they have taught middle school and and
hmm
elementary school. What would
hmm
be a good approach to give um, an example of how students can learn about pH at a younger age in an informal setting?
Right. Um, Well, with educators, the first thing I would look at is their standards and try to work it back in through there. And it may not be a standard that specifically talks about pH, but it might talk more about Earth as a system or protecting waterways, or there's usually a lot on there in reduce, reuse, recycle. So I would find somewhere where I could kind of fit it in. But pH is so simple to do with kids, and there's so many great experiments that really show the wide spectrum of pH. And you've got your test strips. I mean, it is such an easy one to do with kids. And so I've had this argument before in my own kindergarten colleagues that would tell me, um, kids, it's too hard for kindergartners to count to 100. It's like, no, it's not, you know. So it's just, I think what they're honestly telling you is they're not comfortable teaching it. And so if we can show them how it's a building block and we spiral around to it. And yes, it's taught very in depth in middle school, but if we can give them that foundation now, your middle school teachers will thank you for it. And those kids will be so much ready for so much more as they get to more technical equipment.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Tori.
I think the Goldilocks thing, right? Like the bears, thinking about the bears, right? The chair
Mm.
is too big, the chair is too small. You want the one in the middle. I mean, that's like pH, right?
hmm
Usually you don't want the like really high or really low. You want the one in the middle. That's the healthiest for water quality. So, um,
Yeah, Lorene made a good comment about, it's in our diet. pH is in our diet. There's whole diets built around pH, honestly, for people who suffer from kidney stones. They have to watch what pH their food is.
Great.
yeah, bringing it back to food.
Yeah, we do that. We do the cabbage indicator and we do something about the blood pH levels to
Mhm,
show that it's a really big difference. If you have a zero point 0.1 difference in pH in your bloodstream, then all of a sudden you're in the emergency room. Yeah.
mhm. We always brought it back to fish. What do fish want? And the macroinvertebrates. Some of the scariest macroinvertebrates that you're like, oh, that must be really bad pH. They're the healthy ones. They're the ones telling you it's a healthy stream.
Yes. Awesome. Okay, well, it's 3 minutes after the hour. So, um, what is that, Alicia? Is that a scary one?
Yeah, they're my favorite. They're they used to crawl up the river that was across the street from us and come um into our garage. And the first year I saw it, I was like, I totally forgot what they were. It was like this long, and it's got big pinchers. They're called toe biters too. Yeah, a Dobson fly, right? Yeah, I love them. But they're great water quality. They're the scariest looking insect you've ever seen in your life, but
All right. Jody, you were gonna and go with biotic and abiotic interactions, a young learner standard. Yeah, right, right. pH and yes. Anything living is very enticing usually. So, you get more interested in living things than you do. I haven't seen many toddlers interested in rocks. Well, maybe that's wrong. Putting them in their mouth, right? I shouldn't say that. I should stop right there. It's been a while since I've dealt with the littles like that. Okay. Anyway, 4 minutes after now, we're late. This is our last scheduled water cooler, but we're keeping them on the list for now. We have a couple people that are interested in presenting, but they are traveling this summer. There's going to be Scott Graves, if any of you remember Scott Graves from Connecticut. He is doing some super interesting stuff with app development and canopy cover and ground cover and all the other tree measurements. And he keeps sending me his prototypes for that. So, of course, that's definitely an invitation worthy thing. And so we're hoping to get him to present to all of us soon about that and his other work that he's doing. So we're super excited about that. And we will let you know if there's any other significant updates to be had at the water coolers in the future. So even though this is our last scheduled one, be on the lookout. We'll let you know if we're going to have another one and what that topic will be as they come. And with that, Tori's throwing in her links. So thank you, Tori, and thank you for presenting. This was super awesome to learn about the work you've done with AdaptaStream, and I already think you're a great model. So hopefully we can get this out so everyone that's on the line, let's spread the word about Tori's work and her website.